Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing yet another movie review for you all. This movie is a horror comedy from Canada and Denmark. Co-production, English language, released in the year 2012, directed by Boris Rodriguez, and this film is called Eddie. It's known as a longer title, but for this review I don't want to give anything away, and I believe the longer title is very unfortunate because it does give the surprise away. And so I'm going to review this movie as Eddie, but chances are you're going to see the longer title and that's going to give something away. So it's very unfortunately titled, but for this review Eddie is the title. So the story to Eddie, we have this school in the middle of the Canadian winter, and this art teacher who lacks inspiration for his next project has taken a role there. So he gets to know his students, he gets to know his co-workers, and then he gets to know Eddie. Now Eddie's a very odd individual. It appears maybe he has autism. He's not quite sure, this teacher, but then he is told that he has to look after Eddie. And so Eddie's going to be his housemate because no one else wants to look after him. And so he reluctantly accepts this proposal, and now Eddie is living under his roof, but this is where he realises Eddie has a very strange sleepwalking condition that's not only going to pose a danger to the community, but it's going to give inspiration for this teacher to come up with his next project. So what happens at that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Eddie. I didn't know what to expect with this movie. I'm a massive fan of Scandinavian cinema, so when I realised that this is a co-production with Canadian cinema, I thought I have to give this one a shot. So this is yet another uncovered film that no one ever talks about, and I seem to be coming across a lot of these movies lately. Everyone wants to review the mainstream stuff, and these movies really don't get recognition. So I was hoping that this is going to be one of those movies that I would recommend to everyone and get really excited about. But unfortunately this movie had more negatives than positives, and I'll go into those negatives a little bit later. But what I liked about this movie is that it starts off very strong, and it does give you the promise that it's going to be a much better film than it is. So at the start of the movie it involves a deer. Now this is a very disturbing scene, but it's done in a way that was very funny, and so that really set the tone that the whole film is going to have, is that this is a movie that was going to be lighthearted, that you're going to be laughing at really horrible things. But to laugh at horrible things and for horror comedy to work, you have to make light of really bad situations, and you have to make the audience laugh at it. And if you can laugh at it, that requires a really strong script. And so the first quarter of this movie, I thought the script was very good. The characters were all very eccentric. I thought the artist, when he was trying to get inspiration, I thought what he gets inspiration from was actually quite thought-provoking. You know, artistic work does require inspiration, and where he gets his inspiration, it's saying that you need suffering before you can come up with something. And so I thought that was actually a neat little addition to what this movie was. And so the movie starts off in a way that I thought, alright, this is going to be a lot of fun. The intrigue is there. What is the condition behind Eddie? Eddie is a very mysterious man, but what was it going to produce? And so when you actually know what's behind Eddie, I thought to myself, alright, well that was neat. And the whole film has that neat sort of quality to it, and I thought the low budget production was actually done very well. It doesn't really become evident that this is a low budget production. I thought it was very crisp. I thought the snowy countryside of Canada built a sense of isolation, and so psychology is in this movie, although it doesn't play a driving force. It's never taking itself really seriously, but I thought as though there was some elements to it that actually made a thought-provoking psychological horror film, but at the same time you do have some gore in it as well. So the characters that come into the movie, I thought to myself, alright, well this is an otherworldly dimension, and it really fit the brief as far as horror comedy is concerned. But unfortunately, as I said, the first quarter of this movie is really, really strong, but unfortunately the movie runs out of ideas. And when you actually get to what Eddie's doing, this is where it becomes really, really silly, and I thought as though it would become very lazy. So it's an 80-minute movie, but unfortunately after about 20 or 30 minutes, I thought to myself, it's starting to get a little bit tiresome. I didn't really like the art teacher. I thought he was actually quite annoying. He didn't really have any likable qualities to him, and there wasn't enough gore in this movie to really satisfy you. And so the comedy, it just runs out of steam way too early. Therefore you've got this movie that is supposed to be horror, but it's way too light-hearted to be a horror film, and it doesn't have enough dramatic element in it to really make that thought-provoking, the thought-provoking themes work. And so at the end what you got is a movie that you're just stuck with, and so you're going through the motions and you kind of think to yourself, I could check out right now. And so it doesn't really build up to anything terribly memorable. I thought the horror aspects, yes they were bloody, yes some of it was disturbing, but as I said, it was so silly that it just got you disconnected from what was going on, and so you couldn't really be disturbed. And so when a horror comedy, if you don't have comedy and you don't really have horror, then unfortunately you don't really have a film. And so the first quarter of this movie really nailed it. I thought the really disturbing scene involving the deer was something that really promised a movie that never really delivered, and unfortunately I come across as a movie that was definitely a missed opportunity. But I'll give it credit, it is worth a watch. Because it doesn't take too long, to really finish. But for an 80-minute movie to actually run out of ideas so quickly, I just thought as though it needed a more solid script, because the first quarter was great, but it really couldn't live up to that standard that it actually produced. So it's definitely a disappointing effort. But as far as low budget cinema is concerned, it's definitely worth at least a watch, but you're going to forget it very soon. As a result of that, I'm only going to give Eddie 2 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, watch your movies, and I'll see you later.